Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast, where we highlight everyday humans doing crazy, amazing things. People just like you and me who utilize their time, talents, and resources to give back, pay it forward, and make a difference. I'm Katrina Carlson.
And I'm Jefferson Denham. We want to thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are on this crazy, amazing planet.
Yes, thank you.
We believe it's more important than ever to stay connected, stay positive, and stay active. So if you agree, you are in the right place.
I agree. And we are so excited. We are so excited to introduce you to our guest, Kristin MacDermott, who is a resilience expert. And along with her, we're going to make this episode all about you because she's got ways to help us understand our emotional intelligence and learn resilience. So if you're ever wondering how to be more productive in managing your emotional and mental health, especially as we're emerging from this pandemic, then this episode is for you. Also, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, so it's a perfect fit.
Right. And my picture comes along. You see Mental Health Awareness Month on the internet.
Yeah.
There's my picture right there. So if you, dear audience, have family, friends that would benefit from hearing, really anybody that would benefit from hearing about how to be more resilient, how to deal with conflict, discover ways to take better care of yourself, well, then stop right now. Call them right now and invite them to listen along. And as you know, dear audience, we are always looking to bring you the most uplifting and inspiring stories and practical information. So please check out our website at crazyamazinghumans.com and make sure that you are subscribed to our newsletter so that we can keep you informed and stay in touch with you.
Absolutely. And on our website, you'll also find content and resources that we've created to inspire you and to help you become your best self, because who doesn't want to be that, right?
Right.
So we truly appreciate you. And we are on a mission to inspire you and remind you that you are crazy amazing.
I want you to feel, I want you to feel something crazy, crazy amazing.
Today's episode of the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast is brought to you via Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. All episodes are free, so make sure and subscribe today.
Hi, my name is Sarah Casey from Nashville, Tennessee, and you're listening to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast with Katrina Carlson and Jefferson Denham. I love this podcast because it reminds me that you can find inspiration in the littlest of things and still make a difference, even if that means it is one person's life or a million lives. They all matter.
Part 1, shift your mindset and build crazy, amazing resilience. Hey everyone, we are here with resilience and emotional intelligence expert Kristin MacDermott. Kristin says emotional intelligence and resilience can be learned, and Kristin has a proven methodology for teaching it. She is the founder and president of the MacDermott Method, which provides resilience-based resources for individuals and organizations. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist with over a decade of research in resilience. Her resilience training programs have been validated in 4 studies with researchers from Duke Clinical Research Institute, published in peer-reviewed journals, and proven to improve key mental health and resilience outcomes, including anxiety, depression, distress, conflict management, and PTSD.
But wait, dear audience, there's more.
It's so long.
Well, no, there's more, Kristin. Yeah. You just keep soaking it in, Kristin. Here we go. Kristin has designed resilience training programs for some of the highest performing people on the planet, including Navy SEALs and the LAPD. Her programs have been used in more than 20 hospitals across the country, including at the Duke Cancer Institute and the National Institutes of Health. She has also designed programs for schools, corporations, nonprofits, and mentors who support at-risk kids. Kristin is the co-founder of Pathfinders, an Aspen-based nonprofit dedicated to improving the lives of people living with cancer, as well as those experiencing grief. She has Also helped start 0-Hour Expeditions. This sounds pretty cool. A nonprofit that helps combat veterans reintegrate into civilian life and overcome the effects of PTSD by experiencing 30-day wilderness trips.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
You are crazy really amazing.
Old. That's all I'm thinking. Like, wow, I'm so old to have done all this. Maybe it's that my birthday was yesterday.
That's amazing. You are crazy amazing, Kristin MacDermott. Thank you. Welcome to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We're so happy to have you here. And for our audience, we just wanted to let you all know that I know Kristin. I've had the pleasure of hearing her speak to an organization that we both are part of with our same-aged daughters called the National Charity League Los Angeles. So that's why we're so excited to have you here, Kristin. It's so fun to meet someone and then say, come on the show.
Well, I love talking about resilience, so I really appreciate it.
Well, then let's dive right in. I mean, that sounds great. So how did you end up focusing on resilience and emotional intelligence, conflict management type thing?
Actually, it's interesting because I did not mean to. I was just going to be a marriage and family therapist and have a private practice and raise my kids. But I was living in a small town in Colorado, and someone asked me to run a cancer support group. And I thought that sounded really depressing, and I just thought it might be too much for me. It didn't really feel like my calling, but I'm the kind of person that says yes. And so I said, well, let me just come and see. And that took my career on this 20-year turn, which is really the best thing that ever happened to me. And so my interest in resilience came from noticing that some of these families that were in the throes of cancer, which is so destructive, some of them just naturally figured out how to come out the other side feeling okay, while for others it was, a really, really difficult time. And so I became really curious, what did those people know that, maybe the others didn't, and could we teach what they knew to other people to help them? And so that's where it all started. I just became really interested in what other people were already doing.
Wow. And so, by observing, this is really a cool topic. And could you, for our audience and for us, could you define what is resilience and why is it so important to incorporate it into our lives?
I love that question because a lot of times when you hear about resilience, you hear people's stories of perseverance, and just like hanging on and getting to the other side, which is true. But to me, that whole idea of just white knuckling it through something really horrible and hanging on, it's not enough. And what I witnessed with the people who I was honored enough to get to work with during their cancer journeys is they actually felt somehow better and stronger on the other side. And while they would never have wished that experience on themselves or others, the fact that they turned inward and learned, and then they aligned their lives to what gives them meaning, on the other side of it, they felt like they were living lives that were more joyful and they were more connected to the people and the things that mattered to them. So that's what I think resilience is using a really difficult time to learn about yourself and come out on the other side feeling stronger, better, happier.
That makes so much sense. And now I can identify these people in my lives or when I've done that. That's really interesting to hear. I love having that explained. So you love also to teach parents about how they build resilience in their kids. And many in our audience do have children, and some are young and some are older. So how do you equip parents to raise their kids with resilience?
Well, so just so you know, my model, I have a lot. I have 7 pillars. It's a lot. But, to narrow it down, people always ask me what I think the most important thing, if there was one thing as a parent to teach kids. And I always say the same thing, and that is to teach your kids to trust their own guts. Like I call it inner wisdom. You can call it, your gut feeling, your intuition, instinct, whatever that is. But a lot of times, if you think about it, kids spend so much time deferring to other people. They have to, obviously they have to obey their parents, but also their friends' parents and their coaches and their counselors and their teachers, that we can forget to have them also tune in to this thing that we have inside of us that's a really good guidance system, And like we can feel when someone feels safe and trustworthy, and we can feel when something feels like it might not be the right thing for us. But if we don't practice that, then we are always looking outward. And then, as your kids become teenagers, instead of looking to their gut, they're listening to their peers or they're looking on social media. And that's not probably where you want your kids to be getting their guidance.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Okay, Kristin. So let's just say hypothetically, we know parents, myself, well, maybe we did it all wrong. Maybe we did do it right when the kids were younger. How can we help our adult kids moving forward?
This is your questions are so good because it seems like parents sometimes think that we're supposed to know everything, right? Like as a parent, you have to have all the answers. But I actually think the best thing to do when you don't know is to turn it around and ask your kids, which seems so weird and counterintuitive, but I cannot tell you how much you will learn if you say something like, hey, I am just checking in with you about like how I'm doing. Like, you got to be prepared for your kid to, be like, well, horrible. I think I should be able to play video games all day or whatever. But if you start these little conversations, it's probably not one conversation, but just like, when you look around at other people's parents and like, what would you wish I did differently? Or is there some aspect of your life that you feel like I'm missing, or I'm not hearing you, I'm not getting you? I'm not promising that I'm going to give you what you want, but if there was something that you needed to make our relationship feel better, what would it be? So this is the kind of thing, if you can start having conversations where you're actually listening curiously to your kid instead of feeling like you have to be the one with all the wisdom all the time.
That is excellent advice.
I feel so much better
Thank you
now.
so much. I know, right? Don't you? And so that kind of goes into emotional intelligence, let's say. Can you explain, kind of define that for us? How does that relate to resilience, and why is that important as well?
In my mind, it's the critical component of resilience, besides the inner wisdom piece, but they're related. So if you're thinking of resilience as you're going to take a situation that you're feeling, it's either some negative emotion, right? You're either afraid or you're sad or you're angry or you're upset or overwhelmed, and you're going to then try to come out the other side and feel better. Then you've got to have an understanding of your emotions and what causes them, and then how they impact you. And so what causes emotions almost every time is a thought pattern, right? So it's like, if someone says something rude to you, your thought pattern could be, wow, what a jerk. Or your thought pattern could be, oh, wonder what I did wrong, right? Like, so it's your thoughts.
Right.
And the good thing about teaching your kids and yourself to identify what the thoughts are is that a lot of times you can't change the external situation. But when you look at your thoughts and what's really going on, you find where you have control. And that's what resilience is like, instead of staying kind of in victim mode as like, oh no, there's nothing I can do here, you're looking at, well, what is in my control here? What can I actually do to take care of myself? And so understanding what causes your emotions, and then understanding, so your emotions drive your behavior, right? They also show up in your body physically. And so when you start to understand that your thoughts and your emotions and your body and your behavior are all interconnected, you realize that you can spiral your whole self up by a lot of things. You could just go for a run and feel better physically, and then you'll feel a little better emotionally, and then you'll have access to more empowered thoughts. So that's why you got to understand your emotions to really be resilient, in my opinion.
Wow. Can I just say,
cool.
Katrina and I are both big fans of therapy. I've been in it for years and years, and I know Katrina's had therapy too. And so for those in our audience who are guys, it is not wrong to ask for help. I think emotional intelligence sounds like, okay, understanding what makes me tick and the triggers that you may not be aware of that are dominating your life. One of the things that I learned in one of my therapy groups is healthy self-talk, which I think this is what you're alluding to. In another interview, you called this good stories, telling yourself good stories, right? So,
and telling others good stories. Yeah, I mean, because that's what people know about you. You can't always control what's going on in your head, but you can control what comes out of your mouth. And so if you get into the habit of always being self-deprecating or focusing on the negative, it's not only your own emotions that are going to go down, but also people are going to think that about you. Even subconsciously, they're going to respond to you differently than if you're more of a solution-focused person and you're like looking for something that you can do to take care of yourself or make others feel good.
Would you say that's kind of like the secret of self-esteem?
Well, no, but I like that. You bring that up. I think that's a good. I will add that in there. I think that's a good one. But the thing when I say that about self-esteem, we look at our kids and we see so many phenomenal things about them. I mean, just the fact that they are born and they breathe, we think they are until they get to be teenagers, like perfect the way they are, right? But it's interesting because I do this for a living and I talk to my kids and they know all these things that I think. And, even when they're teenagers and they've kind of grown up in the soup of this kind of stuff, if you ask a teenager to name their strengths, like what are your personal strengths, at least in my experience, it's not easy when you're a teenager, because you're at the time in your age when you're kind of looking around and not quite comparing yourself to others but not quite adding up, and there's like things you don't like about yourself. And so my secret to self-esteem is just because you can see all these things that your kids should love about themselves, they have to actually decide what's important, like what is their benchmark or barometer for being a good worthy human, and then living up to that. And so the two things that I think are those categories is your strengths. So what are your strengths? Like, what are you good at? And this can be, I'm good at listening. I'm a good friend. I'm good at making people laugh. I'm good at gardening. It doesn't matter what they are, but for your child to own theirs and then live them in their life. And then to also look at, well, what are your values? Because people who live in alignment with their values feel good about themselves. And so that doesn't just mean things like integrity and discipline, although those are good too. But like if you value being a good basketball player, but your parents don't, right? Well, so this is an interesting conversation because if you're living your parents' values instead of yours all the time, that's a position you don't necessarily want to be in. So those are the conversations that parents can have about self-esteem, is getting your kids to own what is important to them in their own lives and then spend time doing those things, and they're going to feel better about themselves.
Oh my goodness, that is really important to remember, and to live in a way that aligns with your values. And I like that you have that there are other values. That's really true. I'm definitely going to take these back to my kids. So something that's interesting that when I was looking you up and researching you a bit was that you say that most people, let's say, want to avoid conflict, but apparently I hear that you love it. Can you tell us why? Coming up, how you can see conflict in a surprisingly new way.
Well, hello, universe, and welcome to the Optimus Daily Update. I'm Christy Jansen.
And I'm Summers McKay.
We're bringing you reader-funded solutions news every day.
We are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy podcast.
We share solutions on everything from green energy to impact investing, building community, and even baby animal births.
Optimus Daily is not about rose-colored glasses. It is about the reality. And the reality is that we are where we are, and there are solutions and things that can be done to chart a better path. We also have captivating guests like social justice advocate Akila Shirelles and self-identified soil health geek Ethan Steinberg.
Agroforestry, maybe one of the ways to think about it, either bringing the agriculture to the forest or bringing the forest to the agricultural field.
And as an added bonus, you get to hear hilarious tales from behind the scenes and can't miss stories. Of course, we think they're hilarious, but you can listen and judge for yourselves.
Sorry, Amelia, talking about the cat again. Tune into the Optimus Daily Update on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen.
Part 2. Do you have 2 minutes? Then you can build resilience.
Well, don't you think most people avoid it? I did until I realized.
Yeah,
definitely. I definitely do.
It's not pleasant. And what happens for most people is they're not feeling seen and heard, right? And so it's just blame you. You're doing this, you're doing this. And the thing about conflict is it's almost always about unmet needs or threatened needs, right? And so if you can turn it around and say, okay, so it's easiest to give an example. Like, it happens in the household, like with kids during the pandemic, right? There's this like, you're being so loud and you don't give me any privacy and da 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 da. And it's really hard to find what the common ground is. But when you turn it back around to your kids and say, okay, so hold on, I want you to tell me without saying your sibling's name, when you think about it, what is it that you actually need? And maybe it's, well, I need some peace and quiet. Like in order to do my homework, I need some peace and quiet, or I need to have my room be private to me so I can do what I want in there and not be interrupted. Or maybe it's, I need to be able to play my music sometimes and feel like a teenager without everyone telling me to be quiet. So if you can get those out on the table, then you can usually find a way for everyone to get their needs met in some way. Obviously not at the same time if it's music and quiet, but like there's a way. But we don't talk about needs enough because it's so weird. Like who talks about needs? But when you can remember that that's what conflict is about and say, okay, so wait, what is it that you need in general? Not even for me, just in general, that's where you can usually find your solution. And it's pretty fast.
It's interesting with needs, articulating needs, because you have to allow yourself to feel a little bit vulnerable, right? To say, okay, this is really what I want, and then be willing to hear what someone else has to say about it too.
And may I add that you also have to have the emotional intelligence to understand what you need. How do you even know? How do you like get through that, conflict, that anger, whatever might be causing it, to find your need? Like,
well, it's
what
so
is
true. And also, a lot of, by the time we get to be adults, this is why I like teaching this to children and teenagers before they've been not getting their needs met for 50 years. But
so you're saying I'm a lost cause now. I'm feeling shamed by you, Kristin.
No, but like if you think about the idea of talking about your needs, I mean, many people have put their own needs so far down the list for so many years that they don't even know, like, wait, am I allowed to need that? Like, am I allowed to need an hour in the morning to go do something that's just for me, to go on a run or whatever it is? I mean, it's a tough thing to talk about, but, once you crack it open a little bit with people who generally in families, people love each other and they want everyone to find a way to feel better. So it's, the people will help you if you can, not do it in the heat of the moment, but take a breather, come back and say, let's talk about, what if there was one thing everyone in this house could have, one need that you could get met that you're not getting met now, what would it be? And maybe we can't do it, but maybe we could.
Well, Katrina and I love this because we are really big fans of bringing our audience practical, advice, things that they can implement in their lives. And we're also all about giving back, paying it forward, making a difference in the lives of others. And so we were really excited to hear about your two nonprofits that you helped start. So let's talk about them right now. So the first one that we want to talk about is Pathfinders. We alluded to it earlier, but could you describe Pathfinders for us?
Yeah, so when I was working in an oncology department for those 10 years, they're just, therapy is expensive. It's, not everyone can go and pay a therapist. And so the hospital actually paid for this program that we developed. And so everyone who came in got us. I had a partner at the time. And so they got us while they were hooked up to the infusion. And so we also realized there were all these other needs that people had beyond just more counseling than you were getting in the hospital. But people need food and they need someone to come and, rake their leaves or clean their house. And this was a small community and the people in the community really wanted to help. So we were hooking up volunteers who wanted to make a difference with people who needed the help. And then we decided to raise money to provide counseling for low or no cost to people. And then we branched out of cancer because there was just a lot of need for people in grief to have some kind of support. And it's just, it was just kind of a hole where there weren't a lot of services. And so sadly, there was a lot of need. And so we provide that. And we started that in 2003. So that's been going a long time, that nonprofit.
That is fantastic. And you're no longer in Aspen, but it continues to run without you on some level.
Yeah, we have the best woman who runs it. She's just a phenomenal human
and
being.
you kind of keep in touch with, that's a really nice way to keep in touch with your old home. That's really sweet. And then you've also moved on and started something else called 0 Hour Expeditions. And that's a nonprofit that helps combat veterans reintegrate into civilian life and overcome the effects of PTSD. We have had an episode on that. And you all take them on 30-day wilderness trips, right? So tell me a little bit more about that and what your inspiration was to start that.
I mean, the inspiration is heartbreaking. I just was at this dinner, a fundraising dinner several years ago, and it was for a veterans cause. And I just got seated next to this young man. He was probably like 26 or 7 at the time. We'd never met each other, but, I'm a therapist. So people who sit next to me end up telling me their life stories. And he just broke down at this dinner and was telling me how he found himself standing on a box in his garage with a rope around his neck and was one footstep from taking his own life, and something made him not step off that box. He, at the time, I think his daughter was 4 or 5. And he did not kill himself. And he decided that there had to be some relief for people like him who were combat veterans who were coming back and just having a really difficult time reintegrating into society. And so it was his idea to have, if you're a combat veteran, you're used to having everything you need on your pack. It's heavy. You're on a mission. And he just thought if you go out in the wilderness and you're away from your life and you're resetting your body, because you're getting exercise, you're eating healthy. And if we can teach people some of these skills to take care of themselves mentally, that it would be enough to jumpstart their reintegration. And so he ended up, he's so cool. He ended up going back to school to get a master's in this kind of counseling stuff. And so the nonprofit is still in its infancy, but I mean, of course I wanted to help him because it was just such a moving story, and it was just all about his personal story and passion.
You know what I love about that story, Kristin, is that, like you said, you it seems like even if they don't know you're a therapist, you attract or you create a vibe around you where people can share or want to share, and you just saw an opportunity and you helped fan that flame. Well, another thing, I think that you said this is a new project that you're involved with. It's called Project Blue, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about Project Blue?
So Project Blue is a nonprofit in Los Angeles where it's police officers who mentor kids, and they do it one-on-one, and they do it in these youth activity programs that are started by police officers. So these guys are donating, and women too, are donating their time and their energy to these kids just because they care. And so they already had the relationships with the kids, either one-on-one or through these youth activity programs, but they were just kind of showing up and, doing whatever they were doing, talking about whatever. And they didn't have any curriculum for, helping them be resilient. And so I actually provide them these really super simple emails that they don't have to have any training or any knowledge of resilience or emotional intelligence or anything. They literally take 5 or 10 minutes, either when they're one-on-one or when they're in these groups, and they read the email that's a simple skill, and then it provides 4 or 5 questions they can ask to start conversations. And the idea is that resilience skills are not necessarily things that you would be like, oh, I've never thought of that. Like, take care of yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically. Probably heard that before. Pay attention to how you come across to others. That's an interesting one, right? Own your strengths. So there are all these things that it's not rocket science or new. It's just that people haven't put them in a format where kids can be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh yeah, this is what I know about that. And so we're just trying to see if we can move the needle on resilience by having short conversations that are easy for everyone. And taken, separately, it seems like, oh yeah, that was pretty easy. But together, they pull from this curriculum that's really comprehensive. And like you said in the beginning, it's been studied a lot of times. And it's such a great program because at the very least, it's making the conversations that these officers are having with these kids more meaningful, and it's helping them bond with each other. So I'm taking that whole project out to a lot of different mentoring organizations right now. That's one of my new pet passions.
Kristin, I just love all your passions. They're amazing. You've just explained 3 of the organizations you started, and then, of course, everything you've learned and studied and researched on resilience and, trying to move the needle on helping people build resilience. And hey, we want to help our audience move the needle on building resilience. So I just was wondering if you would give us just a little recap on maybe your top 3 things or something that you would recommend that people could do now to help build resilience in their own lives, our audience, ourselves.
So I would say, ask yourself that question about, what is the one most important thing, like something that I need to have a higher quality of life, that if I could find a way to get it met, would improve my life the most? What is that? And if you're not sure, write it down and sit with it, be with it, and then tune into your inner wisdom. Like, if you don't even know what that is, like, think about that. Like, when do I trust my gut? Do I listen to that little voice inside, or do I think it's not that important? And put those 2 things together. What would my inner wisdom said is like the single most important need, that if I could find a way to get it met, and then come up with an action step, like actual one tiny thing you could do to take care of yourself and get that need met. That would be huge.
No kidding.
Would, for sure.
And I love the first thing, because we are inundated, aren't we, with messaging. If you're on social media or anything, advertisers are clamoring for your attention, to grab hold of your thought process. I love what you're suggesting for us to kind of settle down and listen to our own gut, as you said. Finding a way to hear your own voice is amazing. All right. So how would you, we know, Katrina and I just read this article, maybe you saw it too in the Washington Post, about how now that everything's opening up, we've been through a year that felt like 10 with the pandemic. And there's a lot of awkwardness in getting reintroduced to social life, right? So how would you advise us and our audience as we emerge from the pandemic?
I mean, there really is a lot of anxiety, actually, with different generations. I'm finding in my practice, really a lot of anxiety about going back. And I would just say, take it easy. Listen to yourself. Don't get swept into what, other people around you are saying you should or shouldn't do. If you need to take it slow, take it slow. If you need to take care of yourself by making sure you're with people who feel really good to you, put yourself in give yourself as many of the factors that will make it easier. And whether that's with, people who you really feel safe with, or going to places that you really feel safe, but just give yourself a break and take care of yourself, and don't push yourself harder than you need to, because there's no right or wrong. You can do it in a way that feels good.
Right. There's no race to, I guess, reemerge in some ways. I mean, our kids are going back to school. I'll say my daughter's going back to school this week full time for the first time in over a year. It's pretty amazing. And it's kind of, we're all a bit daunted and overwhelmed, and we're just trying to take it a day at a time. And
I would say
talk,
talk to each other.
Yeah.
Because that's how sometimes you don't even know until you hear yourself kind of think out loud. And our kids need that, to just be able to process, and that it's okay if it's like you kind of have ambiguity. Yeah, I want to go back, but also there were a lot of things I liked about being home, name it and get it out there. So maybe you can build some of those good things, because there were good things for a lot of people about taking it slower and being home. And so you maybe want to keep some of those.
For sure. Absolutely. And I was happy to see that you're the author of a book called It Takes 2 Minutes to Shift Your Mindset and Build Resilience, because I'm always good with a little book around. And so that book breaks resilience down into bite-sized skills that you can apply immediately, right? So can you tell our audience a little bit about the philosophy of the book, just so they can kind of know what you have?
I kind of learned the hard way that you can build something great, but if people don't use it, it's worthless. And so my original thing that I built for millions of dollars that I raised with investors was way before its time. It would probably be fine now, but it was before. It was like in 2012 when people were not used to coming online and taking Zoom classes. And so we had this whole online university for like learning resilience in these long, like hour-long classes. Didn't work. But the lesson I got from that was you got to break things down into bite-sized pieces. I mean, I love to read, but just not everyone wants to read a whole book, or they don't necessarily want to read a nonfiction book on resilience. So this idea is that you can literally turn to any page, and there's a compelling photograph on one page, and then there's just one skill that you can read in a minute on the other page. And oh, that's funny, the one I turned to. And then there's a question at the end. The one I turned to is go with your gut feeling.
Ah, nice.
So, I mean, but the idea is that kind of like a coffee table book, which is what I thought it was going to be, but then everyone told me they wanted it to be paperback. It's just like, just if you have a minute, it's like, oh, there's a skill. That's a skill I could apply to my life today. And when you become a little bit more intentional like that, even with little things you're doing a minute at a time, it adds up.
Yeah. You know, Katrina and I both love the book. I love it because there's pictures. I'm a big fan of pictures. So, Kristin, what would you say? Katrina and I were talking about conflict management, and we recognize that sometimes the conflict is within ourselves, right? So what is the most important thing or things to keep in mind as we manage conflict within ourselves and with others, if there is one takeaway?
If there's one takeaway, so I'm reminded of something that you said when you said triggers earlier. And you brought up that word, and I think I guess I would say is like spend a little time getting really self-aware about like what the thought track really is, because like our kids, for example, like a lot of times what happens is our child like isn't doing well, let's say academically, and we get hooked into that, and it can feel like a trigger, like it can feel bigger than what it is. It's like, this is really just one test score. Like, what is it? Why am I so, overworked by this? And if you look at it, it'll be, oh no, like if my child isn't successful academically, and they won't get into the right college, and then I will have failed somehow as a parent. Like that's what's under there, right? And so we're all different. That may not be under there for you. It was under there for me. Like there was a time when I was really with my oldest, I was really like in this like conflict with him. He was only like 10. I'm like, what is that? And it was when I really got under it, it was like, oh, if this thing that I thought was going on, it was meaning that I was failing as a mom, which of course was ridiculous, but it was actually really important because then we could figure it out. Like then we could have the real conversations instead of having the conversation about this surface thing, which was not at all what was really going on. And so, for those instances, it really helps to have someone else. It doesn't have to be a professional who you pay, but a wise friend, someone who you really trust, who's a good listener, who really gets you, because those are the blind spots we can't see. And a lot of times, it's easier to see what other people are hooked on that are their blind spots than it is to see about ourselves. So if you have someone you really love and trust, those are great conversations, but they're hard. It's hard to hear about yourself because those are our really vulnerable spots.
Absolutely. I bet you're the best friend to have because you can see all that stuff. You're a therapist. And so you know how to identify those things, but we do all have friends like that. I like that idea a lot. I'm going to say,
but it's such a gift. It's a gift you can give someone, right? Is to really see and hear them. And
so true. And so just going along with all of these little pieces of advice we're asking for our audience and whatnot, I was just wondering if you had a takeaway for our audience today for self-care. Any other things? Some of these things you've already mentioned have to do with that, but
I think I guess the thing I have to just go in my own life. I feel like in my own life, the most difficult thing for me to do was to make time for quiet time. It's like there are all these other things I'm willing to do. Like I run, I take care of, all those things I'm willing to do physically. But like especially when it all comes back to inner wisdom, we hear our inner wisdom in the stillness and in the quiet. And so if we never have quiet, if we always have input, phone, whatever, everything's always input, we can't hear these things, that the voices that are trying to give us really helpful information every day. And it doesn't take much. I mean, literally like 5 minutes with a cup of coffee, but the intention of, this is just gonna be my me time. I'm not gonna do anything except for be here and have this cup of coffee, or maybe journal, or maybe do like an easy meditation or something. But I think that would be the self-care that has always been the first to go for me, but the most powerful when I do it.
And one thing that Katrina and I saw another interview you did, and we were interested in that you had said self-care. I think for those who are not familiar with therapy, they might think, oh, that's just being super self-indulgent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had said that's not really it. It's more like, owning up to your mistakes and giving yourself a break, right? It's not like that seems like a myth people might have to keep them from getting the help they need. Would you say that's true?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like I always ask people, to finish this sentence. If I put my needs in front of someone else's, it means that what would you say?
I'm selfish.
Exactly. Like 99% of the people say that. But if you think about the airplane scenario, right, you're supposed to put your oxygen mask on before you put your child's on. You really don't. You will burn yourself out, and you won't have anything to give if you give it all away and make yourself so low on the list. And so I don't think it's selfish. I think we all have more to give when we're more filled up and feeling better about our lives. And then it overflows and you have more. And so I think flipping that around from self-care being selfish to being just loving,
So you have more of a well to draw from. I love that. So
that is wonderful.
Katrina and I always want to make sure that our audience can fully access all the information that we're providing here. So for our audience, how could they learn more about you and get in touch with what you're up to?
So I am going to create a page just for your audience, and it will be MacDermott Method /Crazy Amazing Humans. And so on there, and I'll give some discounts and I'll give some giveaways, all that kind of thing. So you'll maybe put that underneath MacDermottMethod.com /Crazy Amazing Humans.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Fabulous.
That's so cool. I did not know that was amazing. So,
and tell them Katrina and Jefferson sent you.
Well, gosh, thank you so much for that, Kristin. Thank you so much for being here. I mean, I think I can speak for Jefferson, myself, and our whole audience that we can't wait to implement these suggestions that you've made in our own lives. And we can't thank you enough for all these helpful tips, tricks, and actually thoroughly vetted and proven ways to make a difference in our lives and the lives of others around us. So thank you, Kristin. You are crazy amazing.
I want you to feel, I want you to feel something crazy, crazy amazing.
Hey, so that's our podcast. We want to thank Kristin MacDermott for being with us today and teaching us about resilience and so much more. It was so great to hear such a positive driving force behind efforts to help so many people learn how to achieve a healthy mindset. Don't you agree, Jefferson?
I totally agree. I definitely learned something today.
It was amazing. I really, really did. And if you've enjoyed today's episode and you think it would be meaningful and helpful for someone you know, be a crazy, amazing human and let them know about us.
Right. Share. A couple of quick reminders. Make sure to subscribe to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah.
And we've also filmed the podcast, so you can check us out on the Crazy Amazing Humans YouTube channel. Oh, and make sure and leave comments because we love to hear what you're thinking.
We really do. And most of all, we want to make sure to thank you for being with us. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Remember that every little kindness has the potential to create crazy, amazing human experiences, one person at a time.
And as always, this week, we want to encourage you to find one thing that you can do to extend kindness and love in the world. I'm Jefferson Denham.
And I'm Katrina Carlson. Stay healthy, stay connected, and we will see you next time right here on the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast.
I want you to feel, I want you to feel something crazy, crazy amazing.
If you have any questions or comments about today's episode, please make sure to write us at crazyamazinghumans@gmail.com.